Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our March edition of Candid Career Convos. And I'm going to go ahead and launch as we continue this conversation. So hopefully you can see my screen. Lolly, can you see my screen with the shared screen right now?
No, not right now.
Okay, let's see what's going on there. Of course, it's going to give us tech troubles. Let's try that again. All right, share screen. And
Here we go.
there we go. Great, super. It's going to put it in the full screen. Can you see it from the full screen again?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Lolly. So just as we get started, let's take a moment to just acknowledge where we're seated today. We've got people joining us from all over, and I am currently in the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen, the Katsi, Semiahmoo, and the Tsawwassen First Nations, who continue to care for and sustain this land. And I also, in this moment, like to take a moment to consider all of what our Earth, Mother Earth, provides for us each day to keep us nourished and sustained. So just take a moment. I invite you to take a moment and think about where you are and what the land has given to you and provided for you, and what you can do also to care for the land that you're sitting on. So just take a moment, please. Okay. And next, I'd like to share a little history on the name Kaiso Careers. For some of you who've joined us before, you know that the history of Kaiso Careers really comes from the West African name of Kaiso, and also the Trinidadian and mixture, or sorry, the Kaiso music and the Cambule music, which is from West Africa, that was brought into the Caribbean. Specifically, we're thinking of Trinidad and Tobago. And the music was used to help communicate and connect people to one another. Both Shalima and I, who started Kaiso Careers, our heritage is from Trinidad and Tobago. That's where our parents are from. And we started this because we really wanted to support BIPOC professionals, to help them build their careers on their own terms and celebrate our unique perspectives and experiences. It was an opportunity to really highlight the great work that folks are doing. So that's kind of where we are with that. All right, and now I'd like to introduce our two guests today. I'm going to do a stop share. So we've got Lolly Bennett and Kendra Coupland, and these are two amazing individuals who are truly compassionate, and they are passionate. They're compassionate individuals, and they're also passionate about health and wellness for people. And so I'd like to invite Kendra to start off and just share with the audience, what is it that you would want our audience to know about you and the work that you do? In a nutshell. I know there's going to be more in the conversation, but just from very high level.
Yeah, I guess from like a very high level, that I would probably say that I'm really irrelevant in the work that I do as an individual person, because I really believe in, wellness being a communal thing. If my community is not well, then I'm not well, and vice versa. So in the work that I do, I feel like a lot of it comes from the community. It's inspired by community, it's for community, and I'm just like a conduit for all that work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kendra. And Lolly, same question.
Well, I think Kendra really summed it up there. We're all small cogs. We're all small cogs in a big wheel, and we do small but very significant things. I think for myself, I've got that, I think this is true of all the Black women I know. We are, it's quite ingrained in us to be humble. So much so that we can't even brag about ourselves. Mm-hmm. So It's because it's just not the right thing to do. But the fact of the matter is that in our daily lives, we encounter people. You don't know what small impact you may have or large impact on the people you encounter on a daily basis, simply by being yourself, doing what you do. So I am a firm believer in the impact of individual trauma and intergenerational trauma. I think we carry it around. I think we store it in small pockets, and I think it surfaces over time, with each kind of changing atmosphere. And what I try and do is my very best to understand my own points of trauma. If I've got good knowledge to share, I try and share it wherever I can. And I'm a huge advocate for self-care and investing in your own health. I'm a huge advocate for that, because if you're not well, you can't be well for somebody else. So we have to put ourselves first so that we can help other people along the way. And so that's my little cog in the wheel,
Thanks.
Small but important.
Absolutely. And you hit on so many points that I'm hoping we can dive into in this conversation today. When you spoke about being humble and then being able to brag, that's actually what we talked about in our last episode last month, just being audacious and sharing and being out there and being bold in sharing the work that we're doing. So I'm glad that you hit upon that. And then you spoke a little bit about understanding our own individual traumas and how we can heal from that. And I think that's so connected in the work that both you and Kendra are doing. So this is exciting. So yeah, I think we're going to be able to dive into this. So let's take a moment, if you both can, think about sharing a little bit about how you got to where you are, how you began this health journey. What's, what prompted it? And I know before we started this session, Lolly, you gave a little snippet. I don't know if that's initially what planted the seed into your journey to health and wellness. But yeah, maybe you can share with us, and then we'll have Kendra dive into that as well.
What I recognized about myself, I'm from a large family. I'm from a large family unit, but I flew the coop, so to speak. And I realized, I think fairly early on, that I needed to find my own personality and my own way, in my own way. And thank goodness, in our family unit, we were fed well. And we were fed healthy food. Our father was in charge of our diet, and so we were healthy very early on in life. We were raised very, very healthy. We didn't have any junk food or even little bits. My father is the only guy I know that made a 26-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola. When they said that was family size, my father took that literally. We all got a shrimp cocktail glass full, that was it, of Coca. You remember those little shrimp cocktail glasses? That's what we got, and we only got it on Thursdays. That was it. The family-sized bottle of Coca-Cola did the entire family. I'm one of 7 children. So, my dad, I guess, unknowingly just promoted health. I think I carried that through into my early 20s, and I wasn't attracted to many junk foods, so I didn't indulge in junk foods. I really enjoyed being outside, and it was only kind of like into my 30s I thought, oh, being outside is really healthy. that totally works. So I think my journey to wellness has been small and incremental steps. And at midlife, the importance of being healthy is huge, more than I realized, say, 20 years ago. So, when you're 25, you're not thinking about your skin, but when you're 40, you're darn sure thinking about your skin, right? And is it healthy? And what are you putting in your body? And is it promoting that? And then you start to realize that, if you're putting it in your body, what exactly is it? And then you further research, and then, you know, you're doing that research and you realize that you just walked, you know, for 45 minutes in the fresh air and you feel amazing, you know. And so all of those little incremental things lead you to a very big journey of well-being. And the question is, do you want to be well or not be well? It's not complicated.
Mm-hmm.
You want it or you don't want it. You choose to be healthy or you don't. And there's no middle ground. I heard something earlier this year which really resonated with me. And the statement was, are you a victim or a visionary? And I thought, wow, you know, like, I'm a visionary. I'm not a victim, I'm a visionary. You know, if I went to yoga, which is one of my passions, and I complained for the following 3 days about how much my muscles ached, that would be a victim mentality. I go to yoga and I focus on, yes, maybe I do, you know, ache. Maybe my muscles feel like they've had a workout. But those deep breaths that I took during that class are my focus. And that takes me out of a victim mentality and puts me into a visionary mentality. Mm-hmm. So I think the journey is quite an incremental one for all of us. We learn, we apply, we learn some more and we apply, and there's no end to the learning. So it's a continuous, you know, we remove what isn't good for us, we input what is good for us, and the journey continues. And the payoff is huge, because when you look back, you can't see it immediately, but when you look back and you go, oh gosh, you know, like, I couldn't do this 5 years ago, or whatever the case may be. So I think that's how it is for me. It's an incremental journey. It's very applicable and it's very doable in small bite-sized pizzas. It doesn't have to be, you know, a huge endeavor.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lolly. And Kendra, for you?
I really apologize, folks. I've literally got 2 bears having a fight on my patio.
Oh.
2 feet from me. So it's a bit distracting at the moment. It's
oh my.
To watch these bears wreck my patio.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm going to do my best to stay really focused here. I actually feel like my journey to health has been almost opposite to Lolly's. You know, I experienced a great deal of trauma, sexual violence growing up. I was deeply mentally unwell for a very long time. And coming to a place of wellness has been like a daily fight. It still is a struggle in so many ways. And, you know, when I came into yoga and meditation as a, you know, a teacher, I actually never intended to be a teacher of these practices. I very much didn't want that. I just wanted to find peace and liberation within myself. But of course, you know, the deeper I dove into yoga, the less it became about my physical body, the more it became about understanding myself as a whole, and also recognizing the ways in which I am interdependent, you know, on the world around me, and very much of the world. And so to be liberated would require then a liberation of others, that my liberation actually wouldn't be independent of that, of other people's. And so in that regard, you know, it became more and more important to me to begin sharing the practices, beginning to help folks develop tools for presence and clarity within themselves, so that, you know, there's more people who want to, you know, move towards, you know, self-determination, self-actualization alongside me. So I, you know, I think I kind of got into it for a little bit of like selfish reasons, like I said, you know, feeling really unwell, feeling disconnected, and not really having a lot of tools or supports, and really having to fight every step of the way for every piece that I do have. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kendra. I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing some of the traumas that you've gone through. and being open enough to speak about it, because oftentimes I'm going to speak from a position of, you know, being a woman, and especially a woman of color. There's often a lot of shame and guilt, and folks don't want to open up about what we've gone through. And when we don't open up and we carry it inside of us, it manifests in our bodies in many
It's like a
different ways.
poison.
Exactly. It is a poison. And
Yeah.
it can actually cause, as we know, so many health you know, negative health impacts in our body, like cancer and migraines and
All sorts of.
all sorts of things, right? And our hearts, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like
Uh,
we look at like Black women are at higher risk for heart attack, at higher risk for
exactly.
stroke.
Yep.
I think the reality is, um, as much as I wish I could say that, like, eating fruits and vegetables every day and like working out is going to solve all my the things that have created grief and hurt and pain and suffering within me. It's not that simple. I, as a Black woman, experience so many barriers to accessing wellness.
Mhm.
At times it's been poverty, sometimes it's been violence that has been inflicted upon my physical body or my emotional body, and I don't always have control over that piece of it.
Mhm.
And so for me, I've had to find, like, what does it mean then to find wellness when the circumstances of our lives sometimes are beyond our control.
Mhm.
Sometimes our definition of wellness or health has to shift as well, for what is accessible.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really what shaped a lot of my work. The majority of the folks that I work with are survivors of sexual violence now, um, or are living within the margins. I work a lot on the downtown east side. I'm working with folks who are unhoused, folks who are, um, you know, uh, facing socioeconomic barriers. Um, and I do a lot of work within the Black community as well. And, the intersections of people's lives within that community itself are diverse, and yeah, so that's what's really has shaped my work, is just my own, like, really being honest with myself about my own health, of what is actually achievable in my life, and then all those little, like, survival tools I've picked up along the way, all the ways I found pockets that I can thrive in, are what I feel I have to share now.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I mean, in what you're sharing, I think it opens up to my next question. You've kind of touched on that, which is um, what kind of really got you into that, and how are you helping others in their journeys? You've kind of shared a little bit of light into that. And so, Lolly, I'm going to pass it back to you, because you've been working for years. I don't know, maybe it's even decades. May I question, I don't know, perhaps some of the work that you've done to really support women in their health, and it specifically, I believe it's the doing the self exams for breast exams and pelvic exams. Could you share a little bit of light of, like, how you got into that and why it's so important to do that work that you're doing?
It's really interesting. I myself am a survivor of domestic violence, and I actually fled my marital home with my 2-year-old son. And and interestingly enough, I'm calling in from the Sunshine Coast today, but my parents lived on the Sunshine Coast, so I left another province and came to a place where I was unconditionally loved, which was my parents' home on the Sunshine Coast. So this is very fitting, very full circle. And if you can imagine, I fled. When I say that, I ran, and of course I was heavily traumatized by it, and I was silent. I didn't tell anyone except my parents and one or two friends that safe housed me away. And I was silent. I didn't discuss it. I didn't talk about it. I did the good old British thing, and I went and got on with my life. And it was actually and I was on the Sunshine Coast for 3 years after that. And it was actually a woman at my son's preschool who approached me one day, Denise Olson, and said to me, "Oh, what are you doing with yourself?" And I said, "Oh, I work for the Canadian Railway and I get laid off, for the winter months, so blah, blah, blah." And she said, "Oh, would you be interested in doing some work with a group of women?" And I said, "Well, what's the work?" And she said, "Well, it's teaching correct breast and pelvic examinations." And I said, "Oh, I've never done anything like that, and I'm not a medical practitioner." So this is me downgrading. Okay, this is me hiding. Every step I'm stepping, I said, "No, I don't know anything about that. No, I don't think I can do it." Anyway, she said, "No, it's okay, because we're all in the same boat, and it's not about being a medical practitioner." And there began my journey as a clinical teaching associate. These women were midwives on the Sunshine Coast, and they started a movement. And they started this movement probably in the late 70s, long before I got there, late 70s, 80s. And they were supporting practitioners in the correct procedures and vocabulary to approach women around the sensitive exams of breast and pelvic exams. So here I am, years later, and I'll just share with you some of the clientele. We have a clientele and we're contracted in. There's probably a dozen of us that do this work, and our body is third-year medical students, nurse practitioners, naturopathic doctors, sexual assault nurse examiners, remote nurses, wellness practitioners. UBC, they pay us for the work. And UBC tried to abolish the program once, and the students rebelled and said, that part of the program is the most significant part of the program. And it's a one-day scenario. So I view that work as my contribution, because as a survivor of domestic violence, I don't ever want any woman to have to experience anything like that in their lives. And if we can quietly, loudly, directly, indirectly educate young women on basic protocols and guidelines, it's not everything, it's only one thing, but it's one thing that empowers them to say, I'm not comfortable, that doesn't work for me, I think I'd like to reschedule this, no, I don't, is that part of the examination? And if you don't know, how can you put the boundary in? So this is what the group of women that I'm involved with do, the founding mothers and others, that's what we do. And I feel really proud of the work, and I've never bragged about the work, and I only told Shelley recently, about this work. I don't tell anybody, I just don't. There are people that I'm involved with, and I do the work, and I do it along with my full-time work over the years. I've done it quietly off the side of my desk, but I am incredibly proud of that work because it also healed me. I could have shut down, I could have crawled into a hole, I could have been quiet. I didn't, and I don't talk about my own situation regarding that, but I think it's enough to know that I am a survivor. And this is, again, my point on trauma is that when you keep it to yourself, it does manifest in the body oozes out of your fingertips, your toes, you inadvertently say something, you shut down your femininity and become a little more testosterone driven as you want to survive. And you do. And I can just say that about myself. I had to be the parent. I had to earn money. I had to stand tall in my dignity. I had to feel proud going out of the door. And I had to do it by myself. And I did do it by myself. I did it by myself. I became a homeowner in a province where home ownership is largely unattainable. But I did it because I was driven to do it. And this is the testosterone side of because I had to become all things. So the trauma, I made the trauma work for me rather than make it work against me, which I think is what Kendra inadvertently is doing. She went in to look after herself. She calls it selfish, but I don't see it as selfish. You have to have a starting point. And really, we're not in charge of the master plan. We think we are, but we are not in charge of the master plan. We're only instruments. And then things unfold, and then you move to another step and another step. And these incremental steps bring you to a place where you have to be accountable. I have to stand up and say, yes, I contributed to the wellness examinations of hundreds of women. I've done that. And I have to stand up and be counted for that.
Absolutely.
I did it.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of it. And it's significant and impactful. And it's also healed me, and this is my contribution to my fellow women. This is my contribution to them,
I love it. I love how that fight for self-care really helped to support other women. And I appreciate hearing, again, you spoke about the trauma and the healing from the trauma, and how you did it. And you drew upon certain strengths within your culture, and it helped, it sounds like. When you spoke a little earlier about, you said how you kind of did the British thing and you brushed your shoulders off. Yeah. That's the British thing. And it's also the thing that many Black women do. And that as well, Lolly, right? So we keep on marching, we focus forward, do what we have to do. Don't look back because we don't have time, because we got to keep on going forward movement. And what does that do for us, right? How does that impact us? So I'm going to just turn it back to Kendra and ask you, Kendra, how were you able to draw upon some of your culture and your heritage to really find your strength and purpose? Because I think Lolly kind of touched on that. So I want to hear from your perspective, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I'm mixed race. So I have heritage both from Hungary, where my family were Romani. So there were nomadic peoples that came to Canada at the turn of the century to escape persecution and genocide against their peoples throughout Europe. And on the other side of my family, they're from Barbados. And so, people who were stolen from West Africa and brought to the Caribbean and were enslaved there. And so there has been a lot of times that I have gone to my ancestors or revisited the stories of my families to draw upon their resilience, because we're still here today. Despite all of those really difficult trials, despite all of our tribulations, we're still here today. And that's a testament to our strength, And it just, a couple of years ago, I went to Barbados, and after a lot of research, I found one of the plantations where my family was enslaved, and I went to the plantation. And when I got there, it was still owned by a white family. And out in the field, there was just all these Black men with no shirts on, harvesting sugar, like cane, and it felt like I'd stepped back in time, like nothing had changed. And And I just felt this feeling of like almost like defeat, or like just absolute like just like I wanted to just give up. And I ended up going to like into ceremony on this plantation. But I just remember having this feeling of like my ancestors standing with me, and of them having this recognition that like they would probably live and die as slaves, that they wouldn't solve all the issues. They might not never know freedom within their lifetime, but that they would keep pushing forward in hopes that somebody would come after who would know freedom, who would know real liberation. And so, you know, in times where I still to this day experience feelings of defeat, or I feel like I lose my strength, I really go back to that moment where I feel supported by ancestors who in their darkest moments still had the resiliency to push through somehow, so that I could be here today, so that I would have access to joy, so that I would have access to you know, the freedom to walk where I want, and to be who I want to be, as much as is possible for me in this lifetime. And it makes me want to leave that for my daughter. You know, I want to empower her and help her to cultivate resiliency within herself, so that she too can go on to be, you know, her most full and whole version of herself. So I don't know if that answered the question, but
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know it did, Kendra. Absolutely. And what you just shared reminds me of conversations I've had with a number of folks that are in the audience here, whether it's us going through our own challenges in life, our own traumas in life, and how we've all had to take a moment, stop, and reflect on the fact that we are standing on our ancestors' shoulders. And what does that mean? And how are we going to, well, recognizing that, how are we going to then, in a sense, make them proud? I mean, just living is making them proud. And then also acknowledging that we also have certain privileges that they didn't have. And now that we acknowledge that we have these privileges, what are we doing to continue the movement forward for the next generation, right? So I 100% hear what you're saying, and I'm receiving it, and I'm thanking you for sharing that. It's truly powerful. Thank you so much. Lolly, anything you'd like to add on there? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in trauma, intergenerational trauma. You cannot heal trauma until you acknowledge you are traumatized. And in acknowledging that you are traumatized means that and it's not easy to look at wounds. It's awful to go back and objectively assess what has occurred. But in doing so, the trauma has less power in our day-to-day lives if we're willing to even acknowledge that we do have these intergenerational traumas. Now, you know, I'm mixed race. You know, my mom's from that, you know, good British Irish stock. And my dad's Jamaican. You know, I was in a no-win situation here. My dad was a bit of a tribal leader, you know, with all these kids. And, my mother wasn't soft either. It was really something, you know. But I realize as an adult person, the things that my parents may have endured, which drove their decisions. You know, my father was not sure on giving us the belt, when 7 children, when that guy wanted control of the situation, there was no shortage of leather. He pulled it out and said, listen, and he had the finger up and, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not uncommon. It's the Caribbean way. My dad was of his ilk. But I think what put my dad in that place? Well, my dad only knew what he had learned from his forefathers. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was doing everything right in his own mind. I love the guy to pieces. Honest to God, I couldn't love the guy more if my life depended on it, because my dad was clear, he was concise, he was objective, he was a fantastic provider, and he was a brilliant educator, and he kept me and my 4 sisters well and protected from outside forces. These are all pluses. And he loved my mother to pieces, you know, and my mother supported my dad as the head of the household. They did everything right according to the teachings of their ilk. My job as a parent is to take from that what I see as the most beneficial, most significant, most relatable, and leave behind what I know to be damaging and not effective. I don't own a leather belt. I've never belted my son. You know, I'm more of a, do you think you can sit down while we talk about this? You know, I'm not listening. This is him talking to me. And this is me saying, oh, okay, you're not listening. Let me tell you how it's going to go. So I'm more about reasoning it out, even though I met with opposition, but I have never hit my son. I have never belted my son. You know, I have never restricted my son from sharing his opinions. You know, I've never finger wagged at my boy. These are all the things that I didn't want to bring forward with me into my teachings of my child. I'm by no means perfect, I'll tell you now. And my son would be the first to tell you, you're not a great mother, you know. You don't make good spaghetti dinners, Mom. You know, like he's the first to tell me that, but I'm doing the very best that I can do with the tools I have at hand, which is all I'm supposed to do. I do it with grace, and I do it with gratitude, and I do it to the best of my ability. And I think that is what I'm called to do. Mm-hmm. My son's going to do better, and Kendra, your daughter's going to do better too. And Shelley and your daughter's going to do better, because this is life. This is what the vibration of our foremothers runs deep in our cellular pockets. And yes, I am quite sure that my ancestors are applauding me on the sidelines for every hiccup, every celebration, every high point, every mistake. If I trip up, I know they're saying, come on, Lolly, come on, let's get up again and start doing it again. Everybody's still here. And, you know, funny enough, Kendra, you might relate to this. I went to pretty serious yoga practice for about 10 months, and I realized I went there to be disciplined. And I don't have very strong stomach muscles, and I struggle with the whole sit-up thing. You know, I'm more of a like push myself up kind of girl. But I tried my best, you know, but this was my vision. I visualized my grandparents and my parents standing next to me and saying to me, come on, and I would reach, and that would be my motivation in my class. It was a very strong visual for me. So, you know, I think we do this kind of conversation that we're having here, where we're absolutely being honest without judgment. We're not going to be judged, and we're okay to open up and speak our truth. I think this is part of the healing of traumas, small and large. Not every single trauma, but today is a victory, you know, in the healing of traumas, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Lolly. Again, this is this is why we do the work that we do and have these conversations. And I hope that it does allow for healing for folks who listen to this conversation, which kind of leads me to a little bit of a segue to the next question. And I invite folks, if you've got comments or questions that you want to add to the chat, feel free to put that in there. And while you're thinking and listening, my question really is around, as you walk through the spaces that you're in supporting health and wellness for folks in particular, I want to just shine a light on women's health. I want to know if you could share any of your experiences on why there's such an importance for you to be in these rooms when we think about Black women and health and wellness and the work that you do. Why is representation important? And have you also identified or seen or experienced any stigma when it comes to the work that you do, in particular, maybe thinking about yoga and Black women in yoga, or any other areas of health and wellness. So again, the importance of representation, and you being in these spaces, what does it mean to you? And if you've experienced any stigmas while you're in these spaces. So feel free, maybe Kendra, do you want to start? And then Lolly will take it to you next.
Yeah. I think maybe I'll start at the last part of that question, which was the stigma piece, because that's kind of what jumps to mind. Is definitely, I am a fat Black woman, so in yoga spaces, I would often be the biggest body in the room. And even, the expectation people had of like what my body can or can't do was often like, projected onto me into spaces. Until I started teaching, I never saw another fat Black yoga teacher. I wasn't involved in like the industry, so I didn't know any of the kind of big names that we're seeing now come up. But I very much came into this industry, if you can call it what it is, an industry now. But I came into teaching with heavy imposter syndrome, because I came in thinking like, who am I when our definition within the society of health is thinness, is how much one is willing to conform to like Eurocentric beauty ideals or ideas of health and wellness. When we don't consider mental health as important as our physical health, when there's so much stigma around fatness and food shame, body shame. Who am I to like come into this space in a leadership role, or who am I to be in a leadership role if I have any hint of mental illness? I remember there was a woman I was dating a while back, and her saying, I don't trust therapists because every therapist I know has their own shit going on. And I was like, but they're human. Of course they do. Of course, because, I don't exist as a fully enlightened person. I don't know any, fully enlightened people on a personal level, but that's not to say that I haven't received incredible wisdom from bell hooks, from Audre Lorde, from Octavia Butler, all of these profound Black women who've taught me along the way. I'm sure they had messy lives as well, that maybe we're not as public. Sometimes we're as public. And so, yeah, there's been like a kind of having to face those stigmas of like, if you're a teacher or if you're in a role of mentorship in spiritual wellness or holistic wellness, that you yourself have to be perfect, that you yourself have to have all the things sorted out. And then on the other piece of that, there's so much stigma around like body shame, around like food shame, that I face, so that has definitely been a point of stigma. And can you remind me the first part of that question?
Well, I think perfect. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, so part of it is like, I think it's important for folks to see people who look like them represented in the space. But for me, something I've really started to let go of is the idea that I need a seat at a table somewhere. And I'm not really interested anymore in being the Black representation in white spaces or non-Black spaces. You know, like I'm more interested in like who is Black and wants to build forward with me and make our own space. And so I'm really interested in like building Black spaces up, supporting other Black practitioners, supporting other people who are doing good work in the community and bringing them up with me, and building spaces together that we can help our communities thrive, which is very much what the retreat that I'm organizing has been. You know, right now we have, I think, a total of, we're working to try to have 23 facilitators come together to support a community of 100 people for a 4-day, 4 days wellness retreat to unpack things like internalized racism, to, you know, take time to address our nervous systems, create space for Black joy, create space for real, authentic connection, because I think people don't take care of each other if they don't know each other, you know? And so that's really where like all of my energy is going these days. Is like, I'm not interested in being the spokesperson. And so often it has been in, whether it's yoga or wellness spaces, you know, companies approach me and ask me to model for them. And it feels like I'm a slave on an auctioning block. I feel like they're like, how can I use this Black body, this fat body, this, you know, this woman to sell my brand? Like in what ways can I extract something from her to make myself more profitable, more digestible, or whatever it is, you know? So I've really started to kind of pull back from that and focus on like, who wants to build alongside me? I don't want to be above anybody. I don't want to be on some hierarchy. I just want to walk amongst my people and have peace. That's my big goal. So that's what I want to focus my energy on.
Love, 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 love everything you said. And you forgot to share with the audience when the retreat is. Like, please, because you can't do that teaser there, Kendra. Like,
sorry, I'll put it in the chat.
Hearts everywhere. Because your retreat is in September, yes?
Yeah, it's gonna run from September 16th to the 19th.
Great, and then you'll share in the chat some information on it whenever you want to. Thank you so much. It's I love everything that you said. Yes, thank you. Lolly, over to you.
It's so interesting, you know. Quite often when I go into spaces, I'm not Black enough, you know. I'm not Black enough for some people. They have a preconceived notion. Who knows what it is? But you know, one of my good teachings from, you know, my parents, my mother in particular, was, you know, just get marching in there like you've got the job. Just march in like you've got the job. And so we did. That's how we marched forward, like we got the job. And I see people periodically looking at me because they're quite like, what, are you Black? Or, you know, are you a bit Black? Or are you kind of Black? Or, you know, and they don't say that, but I know that's what they're thinking. You know, I hold no shame. You know, my positions, you know, I allow my personality to take the lead, and my appearance to run a second go behind. I'm not interested in a lot of questions to me personally about, you know, what's your, how do you see that? You know, especially in a room where people go, oh, I didn't even know you were Black. And then they start asking me questions. I'm not interested in the conversation. Because when you say to me, I didn't even know you were Black, not you, but when people have said to me, I didn't even know you were Black, what they're saying to me is that they have a limited view of what Black people look like, not who Black people are. And you know, I find that fascinating. And Kendra, similar to you, I am less interested with that kind of stuff. I'm more interested in showing up, being myself, and then having people interact with me because of myself, and other things fall second to that. Yeah, it's quite an interesting scenario. I'm not, I do have, I'm sort of jumping all over the map here, but I do, I know going into, and I do practice yoga quite diligently and regularly. And I go in, I find a place, I do not exchange pleasantries. I am not talking at the front desk. I don't care who's there or why they're there, I literally, you know how it goes. Like, I really comb my hair once a week when I wash it, and then I don't touch it again. So my hairstyle changes. Today it's like this, you know what I mean? Other days I've got it up in a band. I do not discuss. I go in my stuff, I drop my gear, I go and do my class, I come out, I pull on my toque, and I go on about my business. And I feel great doing that. I love doing that because I don't want to. I used to feel, I think, years ago that I had to present myself a certain way, be dressed a certain way for these types of interactions, but I don't feel like that these years of my life. Toque or no toque, hair or no hair, I just do what feels comfortable for me that day. So I drive a boat for a living, and I'm out in the fresh air. And some days my hair is like this. I'm in the moist air, and my hair, responds accordingly. And some days I go to work with conditioner on, and my hair's pulled straight back, and underneath it, tight in a bun or underneath a toque. And years ago, I would try and control that, control my hair, put it a certain way to be more acceptable in the lines. And I just don't do that anymore. I don't think about it. I don't care about it. Somebody got on my boat just a few weeks ago, a Caucasian man. My hair was doing its thing, and he said to me, "Oh, do you know how to get your curls really moist?"
Do tell.
I said, "Pardon?" And he said, "Do you know how to get your curls really moist? They've got some great products, and you just do each strand." And I couldn't even get into the conversation. I just looked at him, He said, "I'm a hairstylist." And I said, "Thanks for riding the boat today, Granville Island," and got everybody off because, dude, you don't even know my hair. You don't know me. It was priceless, but it's just one example of many examples, right?
It almost makes me think, Lolly.
Pardon?
I was just gonna say, it almost makes me think too, as I've gotten older and now I'm in, middle age, I'm going into my 40s, how much freedom has come
Isn't it
at this
great?
point in my life to let so much of that stuff go, whereas I was so much more molded and shaped by it in my 20s, my early 30s. And now, and I think I was just in general, very much held by a male gaze and by a white gaze as to whether my hair was acceptable or,
Right.
And then I went through this natural hair journey where I was all against straightening. And as you can see today, I'm I don't have the energy to manage a 17-inch long afro anymore.
Right.
And I'm should I just shave it because I don't have the capacity, and also I just don't care. I'm not interested. I'm not performing for anybody anymore. And so in some ways there's a sense of falling as you get older as a Black woman, you become irrelevant in society, right? But with that also comes a great freedom.
Liberation.
Yes, I do think
that's-
that. And I think in being ourselves and, it's evident when you're comfortable in your skin, and just being comfortable in your skin Because when I see people of color in my work, as a boat driver, I know those little girls. I know those little girls, those little brown and black girls. I know when I'm on that dock and they look at me and I look at them, that there is a knowing, recognition, and acknowledgement. And as the mature of the two bodies, I know what vibration I'm sending out to that little mind. I am like, yes, that's right. I see you and you see me. And I make a point of it, and I think even though we can't save the world, we can't have those saving conversations with everyone we encounter, but we can demonstrate by example our own acceptance of ourselves, our internal freedom, our joy is the thing that radiates out. And people pick up on that. Other little beings, middle-aged beings, teenage beings pick up on that. And I'm one of those people that acknowledges that. I think it's very important, because I think when I was growing up, I saw that, we all know the black woman's scowl. We know it. We know it, we know it, we know it. We've all seen it. It's that stern look, we're not engaging, we're mad, we're ticked off, and we just assume the look and the position. And I hope in my life that I become a contributor to soften that, because I've had that look on my face before, and I don't like it. I don't want it. I want joy all over my face. I want joy and happiness, and I want it to come from inside and be vibrating
And you
outside.
deserve that.
That's what I want to pass on. I think it's really important. I'd like to share with the audience, if I may, for a moment.
Absolutely. While you're sharing, can I just say one little thing before you get in there? As you were speaking about driving the boat, it really, I know from our conversations outside of this, that you driving the boat is also a way of empowering your wellness.
Yeah.
And as you're empowering your wellness, you're also, as you said, showing representation as a boat driver for these little young girls. So I just want to highlight, underscore that, because, that is so important. As you feed yourself, you're showing up for yourself, your self-care, and you're also showing these other young girls, you can do this too. You can drive a boat too, right? So go ahead.
Big
Sorry.
smile. Just going back to the clinical teaching associate work I do, I felt it's so important that I had a bit of a revelation last year, and woke up one day and told myself I was going to make a podcast to highlight these women, these foremothers of this work, clinical teaching associate, because I think they are under-acknowledged, underrepresented, and hidden. And when years and years ago, when women took care of other women, quite often some of those women were burned. They were burned and shamed and stoned because their practices were not understood by the male counterparts who were the dominant feature in the society. So I am going to make a podcast, and I have been collecting data and doing research around that podcast. I'm actually, I've got women in 2 other countries asking questions of the medical practitioners about how procedures for women are taught in the hospitals. Like, who teaches the doctor to do a pelvic examination? And what are they taught? And I'm just putting it out there because I'm doing this, and I'm putting together a survey because I'm interested to know what experiences other women have had with that breast and pelvic examination from their practitioners. I'm interested to know what the experience has been, and I'm hoping that, I don't have the survey together, but I'm hoping once I have it together, you'll all be interested in providing me with a little information that I can, because I want to speak knowledgeably in my podcast. I want women to say whether it's important to them or not to be treated in a sensitive manner for these two very important aspects of our wellness in a well woman exam. So I'm hoping that you'll contribute to my survey. Once I get it, I'll send it to Miss Shelley and she can field it out for me, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lolly. We would definitely be happy to share it with our community. I'm looking at the time. We're a little over, but that's okay. This was a fabulous conversation. And I thank you both so much for all that you've shared in your openness and just informing and educating and just shedding light and joy to our audience today. And I saw in the chat, Kendra, you shared some information on the retreat. So thank you so much. As we close out, I'm going to ask you both our signature question that we always ask, because we like to tap into our culture. And so Shalima and I usually ask this question, and I'm curious because she's away right now in Mexico. So I'm curious what she's enjoying right now. Would you consider yourself a red wine or a white wine or a fast wine or a slow wine? So, and why? So go ahead, Kendra, what would you consider yourself?
I would definitely be a slow wine.
Okay, very nice.
Like, I love a good dirty wine, but but a slow wine is where it's at. I'm a slow moving person. I love the sensuality of it. Yeah.
Thank you. And Lolly, how about you? You're on mute. Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a hard one. I think I'm more of a smooth, palatable, even tasting wine from start to finish.
Ooh, okay. But okay, I'll take it. Thank you so much, Lolly. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. We want to wish you a wonderful rest of the Friday and smooth or fast and whatever works for you. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Shelley.